Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I'm joined today by Marilee Kimball of 321 Photo Booth. And I am so excited to get on and chat today. We've gone back and forth for a couple weeks and spring break, and I was gone and you were gone and sick kids and stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on today, and it means a lot. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do?
Hey, well, I'm Marilee, and thanks for having me on. I'm with 321 Photo. We're a photo booth company that does photo experiences. We specialize in weddings, and we also do corporate activations, but really our specialty and kind of what we focused on over the years has been wedding photo entertainment.
Yeah. What do you think it is? I mean, I'm a big proponent of photo booth. I've talked in the past about, we did a wedding tour, and afterward it was like the vendor only thing, and you couldn't get everybody out of the photo booth. It was so popular, even just for wedding vendors to do. So what is it about the photo booth that people like so much?
Well, I do think that it's this opportunity. It's like the social icebreaker. So I call ourselves the social bartenders. Like, we get on site and we're kind of like the pre-funk party, the party, and the after party. So like, we're there, like we're ready to party when we show up. And so I just think that carries on to people. Like, they see that we're having fun, they can see other people having fun. And so it just kind of draws a crowd. But the thing that is really significant for us is the printed element of these events, because everything is so digital these days. And we do a lot of digital on the back end, but when people have something that they're walking around the room with, that's really getting people's attention. And it's, it's like a moth to the flame.
No, I totally echo that. I mean, my wife, even just as you're talking, thinking, I'm sure on our fridge, I know we have at least 4 or 5 different, strips from weddings and events. And maybe it was even one of your guys's just from an event we went to. But I know that she is a big print those out, hang them up. We have them on the magnet on our fridge right now. So
totally.
And I mean, do you think it's interesting too, just kind of nowadays where, you guys are able to kind of capture both that, the printed thing, but then also like there's tons of new kind of, not millennial, but kind of new 2020 kind of, like we were talking about, like gifts and like other animated things. I mean, you guys really kind of get both ends of it, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I kind of approach it in 2 different ways. Like, we have a traditional old school booth where you can get in and sit down and close the curtain. And that's a very intimate process. Like, you can get a couple people in there, maybe like 6 people, nice and close together. And then you've got the open set kind of thing. And so with the open sets, we really like to add a decorative element to the space. So like, we're thinking of it in this other layer. Like, it's not just we're taking funny pictures of people goofing off. It's like, we're looking at the backdrops as being an important element in the room, because it's a big space that we take up. It's about 8 foot by 8 foot, and so you could have something there that's just big green screen monstrosity, and that's something that people do. Or what we do is more, we like to add, like I said, a design element to it. And then further than that, you can go to a completely digital component that we were kind of discussing. But for us, I really live that kind of keeping it real, trying to add something real to the space, especially if it's going to be digital. Because if that's where we're stopping at the night, then there should be something about our setup that adds to the space.
And your guys' booths, I mean, are really nice, right? I mean, I was looking on the site and stuff too, and I know I've seen them and, in person and talked with other people, but kind of describe kind of the actual, I would say like you guys try to be like pretty upscale luxury, kind of, refined looking, kind of talk about that.
Yeah, thanks for noticing that. I'm actually the designer of those booths, and I went to Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. So my focus when I went to school was furniture design. So when we were first starting to develop these, we were looking at old school classic, like kiosk booths that were, in movie theaters and in malls across the country way back in the day. And we were thinking, we need something to be portable and we need something to show up in these spaces. But like, what does that look like at the Four Seasons? What does that look like at the Fairmont? Like, how do those things get there? So we really wanted to speak to the people who knew that quality, because, the photo booth is just a box at some point. It's just a piece of furniture, and anything can be about the quality of imagery past that. And so we wanted to marry like really high end photography and video experiences. And when I say video, I mean like GIF bursts and boomerang, that kind of thing. And we wanted those to exist in a space where, again, we're just looking like quality, quality, quality. And I think that that's reflected in the product that we've been able to develop.
That's fascinating that you say that you went to school for furniture design, because I totally see that, when I see kind of the boxes and stuff. That's really, I always think it's so interesting, what people do now with weddings and kind of, how they got there, right? And you can definitely see kind of those influences and how people, went through and different careers and schooling and stuff before that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is like, it was such a fun project to do, just to really look at the history of photo booths and the history of cameras and trying to bring those classic elements and, go with something that's also modern, because, we're not printing film, and there still are photo booths that are doing those processes, and they're very few and very hard to find, but they do exist. And we wanted it to feel that way though, and have that classic bit. But I think that like another thing we talk about is that layer of quality, and we figure that, there's just people that get it, and there's people that are going to notice, and that level of quality, not everybody sees, but the people who get it are our clients. And there's the guests who are getting it and coming up and like, whoa, what is this thing? And checking it out and looking at all the details, because we thought about all those details. We made those happen intentionally.
Yeah, because I've definitely, you definitely seen like, or if you go to enough events, you've definitely seen like there's a difference, right? And you want to kind of, like you said, kind of inhabit that space. And yeah, if you are at like the Fairmont or whatever, or somewhere that, you want it to be nice and not kind of be an ISO, right? I think it's hard where, like me, like our video cameras, like are kind of an eyesore, where you can kind of design that around something that's like looks awesome and that's kind of almost looks like it's meant to be there. And then the guests can kind of interact with it, right?
Yeah. And, something that's really interesting about photo booths is like when we started, this was 10 years ago. Well, actually we're going into year 11, and it was, very much just the classic school booth that was out there. There was, some inquiry about photo entertainment in an open sense. But to us, we were like, I don't know about that. Like there's something really nice about being behind the curtain and having that intimacy. But then we started to see what happened when not just one person or two people, but like when the whole room shows up with a smartphone. Like everything in our society has changed in 10 years. And to see the impact that that's had, where it was weird to be in the corner of the room wide open taking pictures 10 years ago. But let's say in the last 6, for sure, like it's not a problem, because everybody's taking out their phones anywhere they go. They're taking pictures openly. So you have a different interaction with people being totally comfortable in like huge packed events. They have no problem. And I kind of look at what we're doing as like putting things on stage. Like we're creating the stage for people to step up to when we're doing our studio booths. And it's really cool to see people like they see the gear, they see the set, and then they see themselves. And it's really important to me. I want people to see themselves. Like you come into our booth, you can see yourself live on the monitor, but people see themselves in this environment, and their behavior changes just based on where they're at in the night and what they see. You know what I mean? And if they see their friend behind them just being ridiculous, they're going to go there, and they're going to do it collectively. So the photo booth was not my intention to be a social experiment, but it totally is. And I am like, just following on going, this is what people are doing these days. And it's really fun to see.
It really does. Yeah. I think it gives people permission to do stuff that it wouldn't necessarily be like socially acceptable sometimes. Yeah. We had a wedding this summer, and there was like a guy with like one of those horse head things, like with the unicorn and this girl. Yeah. And I was like, this is not like going in the video, because I don't want this to be like an R-rated, wedding video experience. But then it, the thing clicks. And then they're like, okay, we're done. And then they walk off, and you're like, that was really weird that was, that you guys just, I don't know. It's interesting.
It is interesting. And I mean, like, I would like to speak to props, because, like when we first started doing this, we curate like what we want to have out for people. And initially there was sort of like an expectation that you're supposed to bring certain things. And what we've seen over the years has really made us not want to put out a bunch of props. I mean, it can get like a little, thrift store looking at a wedding. It can be like there's this table in the back room. And I understand that like those are fun and funny things, but when you're taking beautiful pictures and you're taking pictures with this group of people that maybe don't get together very often or ever, you know, it's like two families coming together. I'm a fan of very intentional curated props, but like the table on the back corner with all the stuff, like we just did away with that a long time ago. And we don't really participate in that from our point of view. And if people want to bring that, that's fine. But for us, it's like, there's so much expression that people have. And a lot of my employees that work for me, are also from Cornish and artists and dancers and theater majors. And so like, we're expressive, you know, and I mean, put a dancer in the photo booth. And I mean, for days, you've just got pose after pose after pose. And I love to see that. So, you know, the horse head, the funny stuff, you know, like feather boas are like a definite no for us. Like I'd never want to see a feather boa in my life ever again. Fair to say, but I enjoy the weird aspect of it, but I also think that there's something else it can be doing that's maybe like people are letting loose in a totally different way. Like you don't have to hide behind a prop, like be who you are. And I think that goes back to like that keeping it real and trying to like get in touch with the people, like even as inebriated as people can be at a reception, like these personality traits come out and it's fun to capture.
Yeah. And then talk about too, because you said like a lot of like your booth attendants or whatever, you know, are artists and things like that. Do you find that having people like that kind of helps? Like, I know if you go to like a photo booth and there's just like some kid that's sitting there like, okay, go, like maybe, but if you have somebody that's working the booth that is a lot more kind of creative and outgoing and personality driven, that kind of helps people too. Absolutely.
I mean, this is an experience, you know, and if you put a dud in the corner of the room, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to interface with. I mean, not necessarily performance art, but we are performing. I mean, this is a thing where we are there to engage the guests. We want to have, you know, high energy and, you know, quick turnaround. Like this is like short conversations with people, trying to get them comfortable. And at some point, it doesn't matter what happened before you hit the door. When you come in, you're on stage, you're performing, this is your people, and you're trying to provide this experience and interactive that is a connection. And so I think that, again, it's like we're not acting, but it is a performance. And interesting that you bring that up because kind of the root of my business was that my sister got married. This was 11 years ago. And she's a photographer and she wanted to have like an old school classic booth come to her wedding. And the company that she had hired totally stood her up and said like 2 weeks before the wedding, we cannot be there. So sorry. So she was devastated and she goes on the hunt for this like photo booth to find in the Pacific Northwest. There weren't very many options. And the one that she found, they sent this like really tacky box that had been painted with this like, you know, shower curtain that went around it. And this dude, and he shows up and he sits next to the photo booth the whole night reading a book. And like, we're up there going crazy. And he's just like sitting there reading this book and like not saying anything to us. And we're a very fun bunch. And so it was weird to have this dude like not be able to have fun with us. And also it just made it so awkward. So we sort of looked at that and we were like, we have to do better than this for people's weddings. Like this shouldn't even be an option. Like it's never an option that we would have picked. But now that there are so many like people jumping into the photo booth industry, you really see the scale of quality to where people are charging a hefty fee, calling themselves professionals, calling themselves photo booth businesses, and they're bringing garbage and they're setting up garbage. And we've experienced that personally. We've paid for it. And, I can go back and look at her guest book and it's very obvious that wasn't our company.
Oh yeah, no. And I mean, I've seen them too, where, you know, you get it and it's like it's like a step above an iPad or whatever. And you're going and or even and I know that there's a lot of them nowadays that it'll be like the photographer that does it, which like, I guess it's a photo booth, but it's not really a photo booth because it's not really the same thing. Right. You know what I mean? I don't know. Am I wrong in thinking that is not the same as a photo booth?
I think that at this point, photo booths really aren't photo booths. I mean, they're photo experiences. We have real photo booths, and they're on our website, and you can see we will bring you a photo booth and you sit in it because it's a booth, and you sit down and you close the curtain. That, in my mind, is the definition of photo booth. But the photo experience has changed, and it's become the category that everybody has just fallen under. So people aren't going to be Googling for photo experiences, bride and grooms. They're looking for photo booths. So we're just kind of all lumped in there together. And I resisted the whole, like, low end version completely. We don't do it. I see it and I'm like, you could save some money there in buying equipment, but it's not fair to our clients. We're just, that's not our market. And I do say, like, there's a market for everyone because everybody has a budget and everybody does deserve to have fun at their events. So I'm not trying to be like so bougie that I'm like, oh, nobody else counts. Only, the people at the Fairmont get the best. But it's like, they have a budget. And so we're bringing it to their budget and to the level that they're having their events at. And some of my favorite weddings have been, in the basement of a church with people that cater it by Costco. And, I'll show up at whatever, we just want to have a good time. But we want the people who are at least contracting our services to get the best quality they can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to kind of get in kind of the origin story here a little bit. So you said you went to school in Seattle. Did you grow up here? Are you a native?
Yeah, I am from the Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
And so you said you went to school for furniture design initially. Kind of how did, I know you talked a little bit about your sister's wedding, but how did a furniture designer study or go to kind of running the photo booth company?
Well, it's been sort of an interesting history because I got done with furniture design at Cornish, and everything had been moved overseas. Like all of the jobs for designers, like you could be a designer, but you had to be a senior design position. And then all of those jobs were being sourced out to China. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do for work? So I got a job working for, at the time, MoPOP was called Experience Music Project. And I got to help open the museum, and I was on their exhibit team. So we were building out exhibits and that kind of thing for them. And at that time, I also got involved in doing graphic production and sort of brought more graphic design in. So I like to think that I'm a person of many hats and layers here. So I've got the furniture design degree, and then I'm working in exhibits, and we're trying to like make these experiences for people where they're coming up. And, we were doing full build outs there down in the SOTO district. And so by the time, let's see, where did we go from there? So like I was working for them, and then I ended up getting pregnant with my son, and there was just a whole bunch of layoffs that were happening, and I ended up getting laid off with, our entire team was dispatched. And so I was just trying to figure out what to do, and I was working from home and freelancing and building websites and just trying to like do some graphic design stuff. And so when my sister had her wedding, it was kind of like an aha moment where all of this stuff came together and all the spokes aligned, and then we just got rolling.
Because, that was definitely, if you figure 10, 11 years ago, like you said, there just wasn't as many options in terms of, people to choose, right? So,
yeah.
And obviously, so, you saw kind of what you didn't want. And so then how did this come about, kind of building this, for a better word, like kind of luxury photo booth company brand?
Well, I hang out with a really interesting guy, and this guy was my, his name is Attila Barcha, and he was my upholstery instructor when I went to Cornish, and he's more like a philosopher. He's really a cool guy. He just had his 70th birthday, and so like I like to hang out with this old dude, and we just have a lot of conversations, and we talk about things. And so there was a lot of conversation where we're sitting like literally at the table having talks and talking about what the potential for this could be. And so we were just daydreaming it, and we did daydream it for a while. And the first photo booth we made and we prototyped was the photo booth that we ended up sticking with, because we had thought about all these details over a period of time, and we'd drawn it and mocked it up, and then it just works. So
had you had, kind of doing this, entrepreneurial, any like family members, anything? Was that like, yeah, obviously you were trying to figure out something to do, after getting laid off. But like, I'm always curious when people spawn, like, okay, well, I decided to start a business. Like, did you have any, like, other family members or anybody or any kind of experience of kind of doing that?
Yeah. My dad is an entrepreneur, and he definitely is a guy who comes from like the hard knocks and was able to be a very successful person, and has had, a lot of things in his experience that showed me, I was like, oh, well, if my dad can do it with his backstory, that seems like potential. And really, he was somebody who I leaned into and asked a lot of questions. Some things I chose to do my own way, regrettably, because he was right in hindsight. But yeah, I did have that. And then I also had a sense about myself that I know, and this is just true for me. Like I love this business, but I love my family, and I'm a mom, and I chose to be a mom. And so I did not want to get my business so big that I couldn't be at home with my kids. That was really important to me. So I had a lot of people that were reaching out, and they wanted to franchise my business early on, and they wanted me to go nationwide and get big. And I really said no to that because I could see the writing on the wall, and that was me being a workaholic and never home, and what would be required to make a business grow like that really requires so much attention. And I mean, even with staff, you're dedicated to that. So I've intentionally chosen to keep my business small and like I call it a boutique scale, where we're just serving our local market. We're going to pick and choose what we do. I don't take all my inquiries. I definitely want it to be mutually beneficial. So if it's not going to work with my kids having a hockey tournament where we're traveling out of town, I'm not going to take it. Even though I have staff and they could work it, I'm very involved with all of my events. And I like that about my business.
What were some things kind of starting off, like you said, you had like asked your dad for some advice or whatever, but what were some things that like really surprised you about how hard it was kind of getting the business going, and now obviously 10 plus years later?
Well, when we first started, there was a recession. And so people are like, you're crazy. But I didn't feel the effects of that. Like we just kind of showed up online and started doing, open houses and jumping into wedding shows and showcases. And we just got immediate response. And I was going, there's a recession going on? Like, that's not applicable here to this, because it seemed like weddings were still happening when corporate went down. And so people were still getting married. And then when things got better, then we started to see our corporate numbers come up. And so there's just been a nice balance where things ebb and flow, and we've been able to keep busy on both sides of it.
Yeah, talk about kind of the difference of between doing weddings and then obviously the more corporate events, and maybe where it's obviously upscale weddings too, but it's different kind of doing the corporate event, right?
It is. It's way different. I mean, I love the love of the weddings. Like, I love that people are showing up and they love their friends and they love their family members. And so that's like something that's great. And I would say that the behavior is mostly better, not always. But I mean, the idea that like people a lot of times at the corporate events, they just get there and they just get so hammered so fast, and they're just looking to like end the party right as they arrive, and people can get really, I think with our corporate events, I see a lot of people just being moved into more like the taking experience, where one of the things that I love about what we do is for weddings is our guest book. And so we're encouraging people to like write in the guest book, and we're putting pictures in there all night. And so there's this engagement that we have with people where they're seeing, something come together for their friends, and they're excited and they're sort of like working towards that. Whereas, at a corporate event, it's just me time, and then people are on their way. So it's different that way.
Yeah, but yeah, and especially with like the guest book, where you get it's kind of neat for a wedding, because obviously it's an activity for the guests, but that's also usually a take home for like the bride and groom too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so like with the guest book, like those are interesting because, I mean, it's like mad scrapbooking. Like you're just at this event and you're just like, okay, I'm going to get this stuff in there and try to make it look as good as I can. Super fast turnaround. And we actually ended up having our books custom made here in town by Paper Hammer in Seattle. And so they make our books for us because we were looking around and we're like, I don't really want those plastic sleeves. I don't want to see that. And I'm not going to just like go buy some $10 book and charge somebody, $100 for a book that they could go buy at Walmart or Michael's. So we've been kind of working on revisiting the next edition of our book. And I think Paper Hammer is going to put those together, but we're doing some larger formats now. So that's going to kind of change, but love the guest book. It's the best part of our service for weddings.
What were some of the skills? Obviously, you talked about kind of doing the some graphic design and websites and freelance and stuff when you were kind of figuring that. But like, what were some skills that you were thankful that you had kind of transitioning into doing your own business and running things yourself?
Well, definitely the graphic design helped because I know that can be quite expensive. And again, it's so nice to see where things have come, because if you wanted to do a website as a person who doesn't have graphic design under your belt, like there's so many options now, but at the time there weren't options. So I was able to really carve out our look and our niche based on like putting something out that people were like, oh, that looks cool, when websites didn't look as cool. So that was really helpful in getting us seen. And then I think further, more like all of our prints are branded. So we'll take like the invitations from the bride and groom or the wedding folks, whoever's getting married, and we'll put those onto the print so that there's some harmony in their event. So we want to see that, invitation. And then when they take that print home and they put it up on their fridge, they've got that going. So yeah, being able to do that design in-house has been really helpful.
Obviously it's been, years now. Do you still remember kind of some of those early weddings and kind of how that went? Or was that exhilarating? Was that scary? What was that like?
Yeah, I think that like, I still get scared. I mean, it's still scary just like, cause you're like, you don't want anything to fail. Like there's not one time that it's going to be okay for it to fail. And I just feel like if you're not nervous showing up, you probably don't care as much as you should. But initially, yeah, I mean, just trying to find out like, where's the loading dock? Like, where are we going to end up if we like show up at the loading dock, and how do we deliver this thing and get everything in on time? Like that was challenging in the beginning, but we pretty much know all the doors now and we know where we're going, and we've worked through that. And then I just think like everybody's event is largely the same because you've got like the things that will always happen in a wedding, but then it is different because whoever is showing up at the event, and there's a lot of times that there's family dynamics that you don't know about. I mean, and they start to surface later on in the night. And, we've seen our fair share of drama, and that's been, I don't want to say entertaining, but it's definitely been entertaining to see some things go down.
Yeah. How do you keep, on the questionnaire, you say, over 1,500 events that you guys have done. How do you kind of keep things fresh now and keep things exciting for you and the rest of your team?
I think that like, you got to love people to do what we do. And I do, and I'm really social that way. So, for me, like, it's just exciting if I'm going to be the attendant at a wedding and showing up and engaging with people. I did have some time where there was a time in this business history where there was just life that happened. People got sick, people died. I wasn't in a place where I wanted to be at a wedding, and I didn't really have that energy working for me. And that was tough. I mean, I really had to like rely on my staff to get me through it. And I just kind of was like, here's the stuff, and like really pushing to be authentic on the back end when I was interfacing with people. But that really pushed me to make a decision. I was like, am I going to stay in this business or not? And making that choice, I make it annually. I review and I just go, where am I at? Where do I want to be? Does this feel good to me? Do I have the energy to do this? And with kind of building out new elements in our business, it's really reinvigorated me because I'm always looking for this like creative outlet. That's like a really fun part of what I do. So there's just been a whole bunch more creative options. And so now there's like all these different challenges that I didn't have before. And I would say that the graphic design and the furniture design and the sets, because we go back to working at EMP and like on the exhibits team, like that stuff is more important now than ever. So that's been kind of interesting.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit off, kind of off mic before about kind of some new equipment and new, booths and things you guys are working on. Do you want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we just picked up a couple of photo booths. Like I said, I've designed mine. And so I was hesitant to bring in something that I didn't have a hand in. But I met some friends going to different expos and like professional learning functions where I've met some people and I'm like, oh, they've got really great gear and they're selling it. And it's the quality that we're looking at. And this new booth that we have, that's our agency booth, that really is allowing us to do these creative outputs. And I'm talking about like a CMYK GIF where like the whole image splits apart and you've got like all of these things happening that are motion graphics, or like the background changes and there's digital overlays that are moving and the graphics are moving. And so this is all stuff that's happening right now because there's been such a shift. I mean, people can go onto their phones, right? And they can design something that's really cool. And there's all these assets and elements that people are making available. I'm also seeing like so much stuff about like I said, with graphic design, like you don't have to be a graphic designer anymore because there's so much that's just people are creating and they're making open source. So you can kind of grab that and bring it into the mix. And those are all in relationship to new technology. So if you're kind of relying on, I'm just going to tether this, camera to this laptop, and I think that that's the output I'm going to get, which is what, was the original inception of this. It's like, you're kind of ancient history within like 6 months. I mean, it's just moving so fast. And I think we can all see it when we pick up our devices and like how the resolution has changed. And that's been pretty interesting. So we've got like a lot of stuff happening with GIFs and boomerangs that they weren't even really happening in this way a year ago. They're very different right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, has it been hard? Because I know, there's like lots of other let's just say other different types of wedding vendors that say like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to add a photo booth on, and that could be a DJ or a photographer or whatever. And obviously like they're not going to be as prudent about keeping on top of everything, maybe in terms of like the trends and everything. So like, how hard is it to, like you said, a year ago, like what's a boomerang, or, when you guys started, like none of this was, how hard is that to be kind of been keeping on top year after year for all that stuff and figuring out like how to incorporate it into your business?
Right. I mean, I think that like having training in graphics and motion graphics is very helpful for this. And I think that there's a lot of other elements that go into just being tech savvy. So it's funny because we are very tight with a lot of photographers, and a lot of photographers branched out when they saw that there was this market to include a photo booth, or maybe a DJ who wanted to include a photo booth. But as those photographers, especially the high-end photographers, started to see their photo booths having issues during the event or something that needed attention, they could not facilitate that. And a lot of them either sold their photo booths or just stopped offering, and they just would refer things directly to us. And they'd just call us and say, like, I have a photo booth. I don't want to do it. Can you please do it, because you know what you're doing? So there's a lot to keep up on. I mean, I'm constantly in education mode, and that's one thing. It's like I'm trying to predict the future, but nobody really knows. I mean, you're just kind of like seeing what's next, and it's fun because I do have kids, and so I'm starting to ask them. I'm like, what are the kids liking? Kids, because they know. I mean, and they have a language that is new, so that is also happening.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I know that. I mean, I've seen that firsthand, numerous times with, photographers or other people that, they're trying to do the reception details and also get the photo booth going, and then the paper's out and they don't have anybody to run it because it's supposed to be automated, but right. It's not. But you know what I mean? But that's the same thing. Like I'm feeling like, nowadays with like photographers, and everybody wants to add like a highlight video to the package. But obviously, like I would hope that people aren't going to be as, up on the trends as I would be just focusing on video, or like you would be running a photo booth company versus, I'm a florist that wants to add a photo booth or whatever. I'm just making up stuff now, but you know what I mean?
Totally. I think that there's companies that try to do it all. And like I said, I mean, good on, like, let them do it. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like market for everybody. But if you want something that's specialized, then you want to find somebody who is making that their thing. And that is where we see that rise of professionalism, where we're looking at people who participate in things that make real businesses. Like we were kind of talking about, doing the wedding show, doing open houses, like showing up, being part of the community, like what you're doing with this podcast, and like bringing a community together where there's a lot of new vendors that are showing up. And I mean, incredible talent that's coming out of nowhere. I mean, I came out of nowhere, so it's like fun to have a space where we can meet those people and form partnerships, because I'm not going to be a florist. I'm not going to do the floral for the backdrop. I'm not going to be your videographer. I'm not going to be your photographer. I'm going to specifically and only do photo booths. And that's just the nature of my business. And I think that that's what makes me such a rad part of a good team, because I see all these other people who are very specialized, and you're like, okay, we're all blending together and making this special moment. And these teams oftentimes are, indicated by the couple, but it could also be just that there's a planner who knows what's going on. And then sometimes it's just a random blessing. It's just like, wow, this is so crazy. Where did this come from? But it is fun to be a team of people where you're not trying to spread yourself too thin. So,
yeah, I want to talk about too, just kind of how you guys feel like you fit into like that wedding planning experience, because, I'm sure there's, some couples in their booking, same with video, where they're like, okay, like photo booth, okay, check, we're done with that. Where I think you guys are a little more, upscale, but also just more personalized to the couple, and kind of that brand, and, where people are kind of making the decision, like, yes, we want to choose you guys. We want you to be a part of our day, or it's a planner saying, we want you to be on this team. So how do you guys kind of fit into that and view kind of helping the couple figure out what they want in terms of what you're offering for their day?
Well, it's interesting. It just depends on when people find us. Like often, like in the past, we were like the very last thing people were adding in. They would see if they had a budget for the photo booth. And now I have people who are booking us before they even have their venue. And I think that's crazy. I'm just like, you don't know where you're getting married? Okay, well, we'll be there. But I mean, those are the things that I'd hope that they would have figured out. I do say yes to them, but, and also like we do get asked, and more often now than in the past, about, who are other vendors that we would recommend, or maybe they've like narrowed it down and then they want to ask a trusted team member, like, oh, we have like 2 videographers on the line, like who would you pick, kind of thing. And so we base that just off of our experience with people, and that's kind of fun, because then you get to end up working with friends, and that then it makes it like we're all at the party. This is great, but we're working, but we're enjoying it a little bit more.
We're always working.
Yeah,
yes.
Always working.
Yeah, no, sometimes I'll be like with a photographer, and I'm like, I think we need to like cut it out. We need to like get back to work. It's like, can't be that much fun. Can't be too much fun.
Totally.
That's funny. But you guys, you do feel like a lot of your couples are like making a conscious decision, like to book you guys, and then like you're kind of working with them to figure out like, okay, what does this look like at your wedding reception, kind of thing? Yeah.
I mean, I think that like there's, I have a couple of couples this year who want to do something that's more custom. And so we're having more dialogue and conversation on what that looks like, because those elements are important to them. And I always feel like, like when you go to the wedding show and you see like that there's 5,000 people in a day or whatever come to that, there's like, I always think that there's 5% of all of that are the people who I really want to talk to. And there's just really like 1 or 2% that I'm going to make that real connection with. It's really strong. And so, we definitely get to have, I wouldn't say like it's an influence, but it's like, it kind of is. I mean, where we're just kind of like opening up what we have done in the past and making suggestions on what worked, and being able to say very definitely like, oh no, please don't put us outside, like without a cover, because you're going to have these terrible photos, even though you think it's going to be a great idea. Like you don't want to do it that way. So those are the things that we can kind of advise on and make sure that people, because there's just a lot that they don't think about.
Yeah, that's always kind of one of the questions I go to. What are some common, misconceptions that you wish people knew in terms of like photo booths and booking, or it could be anything from booking to, like you said, putting somebody outside when you're like, nobody is ever going to go in that other room to go take photos or,
Yeah, right. Like location is really important. I mean, I don't want to be the thing that's in the side of the room that's not getting used. Like we're there to be part of the party. So if it's a matter of they're going to have cocktail hour in one space and then they're going to go have dinner in another and they're going to come back to that space, then it makes sense to be there. But if I'm going to be in one spot and nobody's going to know about that for the rest of the night, if we're in a spot for an hour and then everybody else is far away, I don't want us to be in that spot. I think that there's a big misconception about outdoor stuff. I mean, people don't understand light and lighting. You probably understand that quite a bit. Just that people, it's like you're going to look right into the sun, and everybody's going to be squinting, and the pictures are going to be overexposed, and like there's things that I think of in regard to that. And then being from the Pacific Northwest, like you never know what to expect being outside. There better be a plan B, C, D, and E that exists so that nobody's disappointed.
I had a venue. This was I won't say the venue, but you had the park and then they had to shuttle you in, and it was like, looked like it was going to rain, and they had all the chairs set outside. And I said, "Oh, what do you do here if it rains?" And they were like, "Oh, we don't. That's what it is." Yeah. And I was like, "Whoa, dude! Like that's And we missed it by 15 minutes. But I wanted to ask you too. You were talking a little bit about lighting and stuff. So like, the photography aspect of this, did you, like have knowledge of that before that you brought in? Have you kind of learned, or how did you, obviously you had the branding and the graphic design and the building. So where did the photography aspect come in?
Well, I mean, I've been, interested in photography since I was a kid. And so I've had cameras in the past, and I've taken, some classes in college, but it was never a focus of mine. And then my sister being a professional photographer, that was something that I got, interested in. And then when I had a kid, I was taking a lot of pictures of this child, and I didn't want to take crappy pictures, and we didn't have an iPhone at the time that could take this beautiful shot. So I was, kind of exploring photography around that time because of my children, and then trying to get great family photos, and then that transferred that interest into all of the above.
Gotcha. A couple other things I wanted to touch on before we go. Obviously being a part of the Seattle wedding community for, a decade plus now, obviously, Seattle's wildly different now than it was when you started. I mean, what do you, better, worse, what have you kind of seen besides just obviously a confluence of a lot more different types of photo booths and photographers and videographers and everything else? But
well, I mean, I don't want to spend time totally complaining about the traffic, but I mean, like getting around town is interesting, when you have to be in different places through the day. So, I mean, I think that the aspect that I've seen from my business is because we have more than one photo booth. So like when we have to go out, it's like very strategic in our planning, and it's become much more difficult to get around in Seattle. So I don't do as many events in the same way as we used to. And so there's some shifts that we have to take into consideration. And it's like, you just don't know what's going to happen getting someplace. And as far as like the city goes, I mean, there's a lot of interesting architecture. There's some really cool spaces that are popping up. And I mean, I just think that there's a lot of naysayers that are just like, oh, we want old Seattle back. But it's like, it's not coming back. And, I'm just trying to rise with it all and just kind of take a look around and just keep getting a footing and seeing like, okay, this landscape is changing. I just got to remember that this street corner does not look the same. I don't know where I'm at, but hello to Seattle. I mean, I love our city.
Do you think, and obviously, it's still a thriving wedding community, right? I mean, even just compared to like, I'll talk to vendors down in Portland, and even just the difference of pricing and stuff in between, Portland and Seattle, or like we're going, like I said, our friends get married in Spokane next weekend. Talk about just kind of the health and competitiveness of kind of the Seattle wedding market.
Well, there's a lot of weddings happening. They're just happening in different ways. I mean, they're not necessarily all looking at a magazine anymore. Like there's a lot of online influencing. People are checking out, your Instagram account, and they're really like wanting to see, what does your body of work look like? Can they see a portfolio? And I yeah, I mean, I don't see an indication on my end that things have gone down in the love factor, like people loving on each other. But, like, can we speak about this real quick? Like, we were part of the community that was really fighting for rights for our gay friends and loved ones. And so to see that culture be embedded in what we're doing, and I think I kind of faux pas earlier, and I was like the bride and groom, but I try not to say that because I really feel like the couple is what I mean, and I need to make sure that that's the language that we use, because there are so many different ways that people show up and love each other, and that's something that's really exciting about right now, where we are a bubble, we are a place where there's so much inclusion, and there's people are seeing each other, and nobody's wincing, and nobody's, like making it weird. I mean, they shouldn't be at that wedding if that's the case. And I don't see that anymore. Like, I'm not seeing that at all. And there was a time where I didn't know what society was going to do. I just didn't know if like people were going to be able to make that shift. And so we're so excited and delighted. But I think Seattle above other places, I'm going to include Portland. I'll just wrap the west of the Pacific Northwest. Like, let's just stay over there for that. But I mean, so much inclusion. And it's so cool. And so I love a gay wedding like nobody's business. And I love to show up for those.
That's funny. Yeah, I was still at Q13 covering when gay marriage and marijuana passed all at the same. We covered kind of all that stuff into midnight that night, and that was a wild night of news TV coverage, kind of leading into that celebration. No, we just got back from San Antonio, and my wife doesn't travel a lot to other places outside of Seattle like that. And, and it's just kind of interesting. You're like,
yeah,
but it's always fun. She's like, I don't want to get too far into it, but it was funny kind of getting her reaction walking around. So,
yeah, I mean, there's the conservative nature of the larger part of the United States exists. And I mean, I don't even really want to talk about that as much as I want to talk about the fact that like what we do up here is we really love each other, and we see each other, and we allow people to be unique. And I'm about uniqueness, and I'm about letting people be exactly who they are and being real about that. I mean, just the idea that somebody would have to suppress their love for another person it's heartbreaking, and we don't have to do that anymore. And we get to educate people who are family members who might show up at the dinner table and you're like, I don't think so. I don't like what you're saying about that, but maybe you just have never been exposed. So allow me. And that's something that I'm prideful, and that pun is intentional.
That's good. What would you, having run this for 10 years, what would be, a word or two of advice for younger, business owners, entrepreneurs, obviously female business owners too, as someone that's kind of ran, obviously a successful business for 10 plus years now in terms of kind of, and that you could take that whatever way you want.
Yeah, I would say there is room for you. There is room for you to do your thing and explore kind of like the personality and aspect that you want to provide to this community and step into. I just think that there is a lot of room. There's a lot of people who are doing things different ways. I still really, really believe in quality. And I know I've said that. You could probably go back and use that as a shot glass word. But I just want people to show up professionally. And so if you're new to the business, bring your A game. Like this is a once in a lifetime experience, even if there's 4 on your books for that weekend. And each one of them should be treated that way. So kind of looking at the highest level of quality for imagery. And there's also a new thing that's happened within the photo booth community where there's just more open dialogue about it. Like when we first started, we had to develop our whole setup ourselves. So everything was proprietary. And I'd look around and I'd see a photographer in the back corner with a long lens trying to capture what we were doing in the space. And I'm like, it's not cool. Don't do that. But now you can go to a photo booth show and it's like a car show with all the hoods up. And so everybody can see what's inside. It's not a mystery. I got nothing to hide. You know what this is. It's like going into a cake place. Does it have flour and sugar? Yeah, it does. So you got to bring your own, you got to bring your own perception to this. There's just a lot of different style choices. And I just think that people will be drawn to a person's business if they are authentic and bringing themselves into their business and not just, making masks and trying to like put out what they think needs to exist, but really like look at different things that are happening design wise and see what's consistent for your brand.
No, and I think that that's great advice. I think, that could be whether you're a videographer, photographer, for, anything is don't put on a mask, kind of be authentic. I think all that is good. And I will also kind of echo the professionalism. And like, even if you are kind of trying to figure out, if it's your first year or you're trying to do this, like, it is their wedding day, it is someone's day and it needs to have that importance to it, even if you're new and not charging a lot or whatever, it's still their day, and I always tell people, if you want to experiment, you can go, take some video in the park if you're trying to figure out something, then trying to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
Even like when we started weddings, like, I had shot news for a long time, I knew how to, work a video camera before I ever, walked into a wedding. So.
Yeah. And that's helpful. I mean, I feel like if somebody's buying a turnkey solution and they just feel like they've got it figured out, something will go wrong. Can I just also say that something's going to go wrong, and you really need to have some experience so that you cannot make those mistakes at somebody else's expense. I'm not going to say that I don't ever make mistakes, but they're very infrequent. And when I do, I own them and I try to find a process to avoid them instantaneously. And I think that that's something that's really important. We have never had a photo booth fail at an event. And that is because after all of these events that we've done, because we take that great care to make sure that we're prepared.
No, I think that's I as someone that's also deals with a lot of equipment and things, yes, I'll definitely echo kind of the processes in place. Finally, before I let you go, when you're not, running this and, you've talked about your kids and stuff, what do you guys do, for free time? I know you guys just got back from a trip. I mean, give us a little personal kind of just background about you for anybody listening and wants to know more about, the woman kind of behind the brand.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Well, my kids both play ice hockey. And so my daughter plays and my son plays rep. And so we do a lot of travel for hockey. So actually we're just out in Spokane and like we go up to BC and that kind of stuff for hockey. And that's been a lot of fun. And my husband, it's funny because like I'm just this social butterfly. My husband's a complete and total introvert. Like he wants nothing to do with any of this. So no offense to the community. He's just like not hanging. And he does beekeeping. So that's kind of something that he gets into. And as a family, I got my parents that live kind of close by, and my sister lives down in Portland with my nieces. And so we do a lot of like family gatherings. And right now, that's on the list for the summers. My dad just came back from California. He's been down there building a hot rod, this 57 Nomad that is incredible. And so he just brought that back. So for all my high-end stuff, I still can go sit at a car show. I plan to do a lot of that this summer, when I can fit that in. So I've got a lot of different interests as far as like craft and that kind of thing goes. But like, I like to keep it, a little down home and really about the fam.
Did you say beekeeping? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, totally. Uh-huh.
How does that go?
Well, he's got 7 hives and a garden, and that's like, this is like my other side of my life. I feel like it's so different than what I do. But I don't have anything to do with the bees. I actually was the one who was supposed to be the beekeeper. Like I was interested, and then he just took it over, and I was like, you know what, baby, this is all you. You got this. Just handle all those bees.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been so nice. And I know we've kind of interacted and been around each other, but to kind of sit down and chat, it's been great. If people want to learn more about you and your company, what would you have them check out?
Oh, I would love for them to go on and check out our Instagram feed, which is 321 FOTO booth, FOTO booth. Also, our website has some great information about our service, but I think that we're pretty much repping most of what we're doing on Instagram these days.
Perfect. Well, thanks again and for hopping on and taking the time. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Reed. This is fun.
Yeah, this has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. One other thing, I've been kind of posting a little bit. If you are interested in being a guest on an upcoming episode, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. And if you want to subscribe or leave us a review, you can go to bestmadevideos.com/subscribe. So we don't, doing this for profit or whatever. So just trying to get some more reviews and things like that would be really appreciated. Thanks again, and check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.